Hey, how's it going? You are here for Heavy Art Talk. Today I'm going to be going through my top 10 metal releases of 2024. Kicking off with a couple honorable mentions. The first would be Slime Lord. This album came out pretty early in 2024 at a $20 spin. The album title is Chai Tri Diamacosis Relinquished. I feel like he should be like an Anchorman. That would be like a good thing to like just kind of go through in terms of getting your vocal cords warmed up. It's fucking terrible. Chai Tri Diamacosis. Chai Tri Diamacosis. But yeah, this album, it is skronky, it's psychedelic. You have geese samples, you have frog samples, you have songwriting that is kind of hard to follow, but there are, some recurring elements. But if you want something just kind of weird, yet still takes, traditional death metal, and it's not so weird that it's pretentious, I would give this thing a shot. All right, the next honorable mention, that would be Full of Hell with Coagulated Bliss. This is quite the album. I feel like it's maybe the most accessible of Full of Hell, which is, not saying a lot because it's pretty intense stuff, but there's really great grooves on this album. I feel like every song kind of has a little bit of a different personality. It maybe is a little more like Converge-esque than their past material, which maybe is more grindy. I feel like there's enough variety in terms of the vocal style and the drum grooves that it really feels like an album that you can kind of get your head around. But the more you listen to it, the more it basically becomes kind of catchy, actually. There's some interesting like industrial production choices towards the middle of the album. But yeah, killer record, and I'm rooting for these guys. All right, at number 10, I have Gatecreeper with Dark Superstition. I had Chase on the podcast a couple months back, and I, listened to the album a ton in preparation for that. And I feel like with this one, it is their most like mature album. It's taking what they've been doing, but they're going for that more accessible, more stadium kind of like rock version of their death metal sound. Chase mentioned that, massive killing capacity and kind of like those death and roll albums were highly inspirational in making this, and I can totally see why. I think these guys have a ton of potential. I think the production on this album really is a step up from Deserted. And in terms of the songwriting, there's a little more Paradise Lost in there. There's a little bit more doom and gloom, but it's all about the catchy songs. They really get stuck in your head. And I think the guitar melodies are really good. So the more I learned about this album, the more I listened to it, the more it was just, really pleasant on the ears. And it didn't require me to, whip out a textbook and like have to read up on everything. Like I kind of grasped it, and it wasn't such an effort to listen to, which some death metal albums, they're very dense, they're very intricate, and that's beautiful. But at the same time, writing a simple, song that's catchy and gets stuck in your head and works without being boring is very, very difficult. And I think these guys did a killer job on this album. All right, number 9, I have Tribulation with Sub Rosa in Eternum. I would have honestly probably slept on this album. Even though I am a Tribulation fan, their last couple releases really haven't been my bag. But when I talked with Mark Rudolph, he spoke very highly of this record, and I see why. Obviously a more shift towards things like Sisters of Mercy and goth rock, but they still got like the death and blackened vocals at times. And I feel like, once again, what I'm really leaning towards this year is stuff that you can wrap your head around. They're catchy songs. They're stuff you can have in the car, the gym, while you're drawing, whatever. And I just feel like it takes so much, finesse to write songs that are this good. This is inspired. This isn't them, trying to make some kind of shift to get more fans per se. I get the sense that they really wanted to go for this, dramatic shift in song. And I think their guitar player who left was a big songwriter. So it leaves a void. And with that void, I think they filled it with something that is quite different. I listened to this probably about 10 times or so. It hasn't been out for very long, but it's something that I can put on anytime, and I really, really dig it. All right, number 8, we have Enter Arma with New Heaven. Big Enter Arma fan over here. I feel like they do like, every album's so different, and with this one, it starts out with a very dissonant, pummeling song that just it's very atonal and intentionally so. But there's a raw energy. Like, they don't play with the click or anything. You can tell that there's variation, and it sounds like a band that is very comfortable with the studio and embracing that kind of like live energy as well. And, this album really takes you on a journey. Every song's a little bit different, but they're a master of that tension and release. That's common in, post-metal type bands, but, these guys are still very much like a death metal band that is just comfortable playing around with everything. And you can tell they could, listen to Prince, to, Pink Floyd, to, Gorguts. I mean, their inspirations come from everywhere. So really, really dig this album. Highly recommend it. All right, number 7, we have Crypsurmon with the Stygian Rose. It's been quite a wait to get to this album. They've released 2 prior, and I really, really dig those. But I feel like this is definitely their most mature album to date. Excellent production. It's not too clean. It's got some darkness to it. The songwriting is, once again, very, very strong. I feel like there's more of an emphasis on hooks. Brooks' vocals take a little bit of getting used to, but there are times where he sounds kind of like Alice in Chains in a really cool way. And the guitar solos, I mean, you really got to listen to them. They are exceptional. So this band and this album is as good as other people are saying, and I highly recommend if you haven't checked it out. All right, at number 6, we have Pyon with Exhaust. This is a wonderful, intricate, detailed album that is spastic, yet knows when to pull and push in terms of your listening and how you basically interpret this music. It's inspired by a mushroom trip, apparently, and you can kind of hear it. This is a band from New York City, and it has that sound. You can feel that they are, in a claustrophobic environment of living in such a populated place. But yeah, what a killer album, and I feel like this album art is a perfect pairing to what you're going to get here. Very mathy, very artistic, yet it never feels pretentious. Pyon. Excellent record. All right, number 5, we have Cerus with Maze Envy. Another $20 spin release. Of course, they're always upping the ante, and I feel like this is perhaps one of $20 best years. In terms of this record, we have something quite different. At first, especially the first half, I thought I was listening to something that was solid, very well played and performed and written, but it really is the second half where you realize that this band has a lot more going for it than just your typical death doom type of energy. There's like some violin that gets introduced. There's some progressive passages that are more progressive, like Godspeed You, Black Emperor, than like, Gentle Giant or something. But yeah, I feel like this is, a dark, mystical release. I think the production's pretty good. Not the best production of the year, in my opinion, but, the more I listen to it, the more I just realize that it does take you on a definite journey. And if it wasn't for that second half, this probably wouldn't even be on this list. All right, at number 4, we have Thou with Umbilical. This is definitely the most punishing album that I heard this year. Very sludgy, very lumbering. And to be honest, it's an album that if you put it on, it's going to affect your mood because it's so dark and captivating. So I think it is one of their best releases so far. It's definitely something that you put on the headphones and you're just transported, but you're transported to a dark and misanthropic place. Highly recommend this album though, but I might like it a lot, but it's not something I'm going to put on all the time. Really, really good. All right, number 3, we have Neon Nightmare with Faded Dream. This is another release off $20 spin, and it's one that had an interesting rollout. Now, I watch Nate Garrett's weekly podcast, and I knew immediately when I heard the single that it was his side project outside of Spirit Adrift. And I will say, while he's definitely channeling Type O, and he's not ashamed of ripping them off, the more you listen to this, the more you realize that it is way more of an homage and a respectful, referential type of release than something that is just ripping off Type O. This also has, in my opinion, probably the best sound and production out of any release this year that I've heard. And you can just tell a lot of love and energy went into this. And I'm going to say it, I think this is actually better than Spirit Adrift or the last couple of releases that he's done, even though I'm a big fan of that project as well. But I'm very excited to see what is next for Neon Nightmare. And I also feel like this is an album that, since it is a new band, a new project, it hasn't gotten the love and attention that I think it deserves. So if you like Typo, if you like Danzig, and you're into that, you know, kind of like Halloween spooky type of feel right now, you got to check this thing out. All right, and we are down to the top 2. I have Opeth with Last Will and Testament getting in that number 2 slot. You know, I wasn't really even that excited for a new Opeth album. I mean, I like their prog rock albums, the last 4. Wow, it's hard to believe it's been 4. And this marks a new chapter, I believe. You know, we'll see what the next release is like, but it's like if you take the Watershed type of sound, but then you also add in what they've been doing the last, 10 years, 12 years, you get something here that is really like nothing I've ever heard before. All the tracks play into one another. They're all based on paragraphs. It's a conceptual album. There's also a ton of Ian Anderson spots. Both he's the narrator, but also he plays flute on a couple of tracks, and it really elevates it. It's like a guest spot that actually lifts up the album like a lot. But yeah, I think this is a really good album. There's a ton of transitions. Musicianship-wise, it's unreal. Production's excellent. His death growls still sound good, even if I think there are a couple months where he sounds like Fat Albert. Still, one of the best albums I have heard this year, and I'm so excited that they're back. All right, and for my top album of 2024, it is going to be Blood Incantation with Absolute Elsewhere. Big shocker, I know. Imagine a lot of people have this on the top of their list, and, you know, for good reason. This band has been working towards this album ever since the beginning, and I feel like their seamless blend of 70s, Tangerine Dream, Pink Floyd inspired, you know, sounds with death metal, it truly is seamless. And I think that that's really hard to accomplish. I watched the documentary about making this album. It's very cool that they went out to Germany. I saw them live just a couple months ago. They played this entire album in entirety. A little redundant there, but, you know, they're really onto something here. And I can tell so much love and passion went into this. And to write something as a group that's this ambitious, you know, that requires the type of band chemistry that Blood Incantation has. And they're obviously some of the most experienced and, you know, well-studied musicians in this scene. So for me, being a big prog fan, this might be my favorite Blood Incantation album. And I get the death metal guys who, you know, they're not along for the ride anymore. But man, all the people who are, you know, Opeth fans and like prog metal fans that are going to get into this, I'm really excited for them. And I hope that it helps, you know, make death metal really, really exciting and branch out and get more fans, because that's important. We never want this genre to get stale, or at least that's my opinion. All right, and that is the top albums of 2024 chosen by me. I kept it pretty slim and brief this go-around compared to last year. And it's hard to believe that my first video on this channel was the top albums of 2022. Lots changed since then, you know, and a lot for the better. And a lot of that's because of you guys that are, you know, very interested in the visual arts behind metal albums and releases. And while it's a music-focused video today, that is going to be my focus for 2025, is really making sure that the illustrators who spend so much time, blood, sweat, and tears in terms of creating the merch, the album covers, the posters, they're getting highlighted. They're getting the accolades that I think they deserve. And they're a big part of this scene. So thank you guys for supporting the channel. It's been a big year, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.